laws where we're not at that most serious end of the spectrum.
My Lord, there's so few of us involved in this particular discussion that we're now able to write each other's speeches. So I thank the noble Lord Allen for actually articulating, probably more elegantly than I will myself, some of my concerns. This is an interesting... I do want to focus in on two in this group. There's actually lots of interesting things, but I will focus actually both of the amendments by the noble Lord Bassam of Brighton. Just on the issue of the proactive steps to remove listings of knives for young people. I'm so sympathetic to this because I'm pretty preoccupied, just in a different life, on the problem of knife crime amongst young people. It's something that really bothers me, and I worry about how we tackle it. My concern, of course, is that the police should be working harder to solve that problem, and that we can't anticipate that this bill will solve all social problems, and that there's a danger, I think, of removing the focus from law enforcement in a real-world problem, as though removing how you buy the knife is the issue. And I'm not convinced that that helps us. I wanted to reflect the kind of dilemmas that I'm having around this in relation to this story of Mizzy that's sort of doing rounds. He's the 18-year-old who's been posting his prank videos on TikTok and has sort of caused quite a stir. If people have seen, he's been wandering into strangers' homes uninvited, asking random people in the street if they want to die, ran off with an elderly lady's dog, making fun of Orthodox Jews. I mean, generally speaking, this 18-year-old is obnoxious. And his TikTok videos have gone viral. Everybody's discussing it. And this kind of cruelty for kicks genre of filming yourself and showing your face full to the camera and so on is certainly abhorrent. But a little bit like this discussion about knife crime, I've noticed that some people are attempting, this is outside of this house, to blame the technology for the problem, and saying that what should have happened is that the videos were removed earlier, and that it's TikTok's fault that we have this antisocial behaviour. Whereas I think it's a much deeper, broader social problem to do with the erosion of adult authority and the reluctance of grown-ups to clearly intervene when people are behaving badly. But I don't want to, that's kind of my thesis. It's undoubtedly a police matter. The police seem to have taken ages to have located Mizzy. They eventually got him. They charged him on very low offences, so that he was basically on the TV being interviewed the other evening, in which he was laughing at how weak the law was. But the laws that he was laughing at was that he could freely walk into somebody's house or be obnoxious and get away with it. And so he actually said, we can do what we want. And I thought that mockery does throw up problems, but I don't necessarily think that this bill is the kind of way you'd solve it. But it leads me into my concerns about Amendment 268AA, as it happens, because Mizzy actually was quoted in the Independent newspaper as saying, I'm a black male doing these things, and that's why there's such an uproar. And so I then went on to a social media thread in which any criticism of Mizzy's behaviour was described as racist harassment. And I think that shows the complexity in relation to what's been called for in Amendment 268AA, when it wants platforms to take additional steps to combat incidents of online racially aggravated harassment. My worry is that we end up in a situation where we're not even discussing Mizzy's TikTok videos being removed, but his critics being removed for racially harassing him. And so I think we have to be very, very careful here. The Amendment 268AA goes further because it wants tech companies to push for prosecution, and I really do think that's a dangerous step, encouraging private companies to get entangled up in deciding what's criminal and so on. And I think actually Lord Allen has actually explained exactly what my concerns are, so I won't repeat that. It is difficult enough. But the amendment also, and maybe I can probe this probing amendment here, also broadens the issue out to all forms of harassment. Oh, I did want to say the amendment mentions, by the way, the appalling racist abuse that was aimed at footballers and public figures. But one of the things that was fascinating about that was when you actually number crunched or went granular, we found out that actually the majority of that racist abuse seemed to have been generated by bots, which takes us to the Noble Lord Knight's position earlier, which is who would you be prosecuting in that instance? Bots, not even based in the UK, were generating what was assumed to be an outbreak of racist abuse amongst football fans in the UK, but the numbers didn't equate to that. So there were some people being racist and vile, and there were some things that were just generated in these bot forms. But anyway, to go back, the amendment goes on to broaden the issue out to what it says, other forms of harassment and threatening abusive behaviour. And I think this, again, is much more complicated in today's climate, because it can be that those kind of accusations are deployed for bad faith reasons, particularly against public figures, actually. And we have an example close to this House, because I hope that people have been following and will show solidarity to what's been happening to Baroness Faulkner of Margravine, who is chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who is tasked with upholding the equality law, but is at the centre of a vicious internal row after her officials filed a dossier of complaints about her, and they have alleged that she is guilty of harassment. There's a QC being brought in, 40 complaints. The whole thing is costing a fortune for both the taxpayers and for Baroness Faulkner individually. But it coincides with Lady Faulkner advising ministers to update the definition of sex in the 2010 Equality Act to make it clear that it refers to biological sex, and producing official advice clarifying that that women can be lawfully, that trans women can be lawfully excluded from female-only spaces. And we know how toxic that whole debate is. Many of us feel that a lot of the accusations against the noble Baroness are ideologically and politically motivated, vexatious complaints. And I'm distressed to read newspaper reports that says Baroness Faulkner has been close to tears, asked why would anyone go into public service. And all this for the crime of being a regulator of upholding and clarifying the law. I hope it doesn't happen to the person who's going to end up regulating Ofcom, that he kind of ends up close to tears as he stands accused of harassment and abusive behaviour and so on. But the reason I'm using this is that the point is that she is the one who is being accused of harassment. I've seen the vile abuse that she has received online, completely defamatory, vicious abuse. And yet somehow it ends up being that we say that because she doesn't provide psychological safety at work, she's accused of harassment because of her views, she's the one in the firing line. And I just don't want us to introduce that kind of complexity, it's what I've been worried about throughout, into what is either banned, removed, or sent to the police as examples of harassment or hate crime. I know that's not the intention of these amendments, it's the unintended consequences that I dread.
My Lords, I rise
to speak